You are watching Channel Africa Conversations.
You have people in your newsroom and you are seeing that there is an over-representation of other people, then it means that you are not intentional. I think more than anything, we need newsroom leaders, we need media house owners who are very intentional.
Hello and welcome to Channel Africa Conversations. I'm Peter Ndoro, your host. Thank you very much indeed for joining us for yet another edition. Now, one profession that we hardly ever focus on is our own, the news industry. We often talk about how governments are cracking down on journalists and how the media houses are under attack sometimes. Well, our guest is a journalist herself and has done research on how Black African female journalists in particular are leaving the newsroom because of bad treatment. She made a presentation at the Frontline Club in London where she shared her Reuters Institute project looking into this particular issue. And a question that she asked her audience was, how can newsrooms better show up for Black African women? Her name is Bongekile Macupe, and she's the Deputy Politics Editor at News 24, one of South Africa's biggest online news networks. And she joins me now to answer the question and also tell us a little bit more about what she found out and perhaps what could be done, what practical solutions are there for the plight of women, Black African women in particular, in the newsrooms. Bongekile, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Thank you, Peter, for having me.
It's, you know, it's quite sad to hear that the plight of Black African women is so difficult, given that we work with each other. And I must say, as a man, sadly, we not always see it and not always know that it's going on. Is it just the bosses that know the disparities?
You're right to say that we can work in the same newsroom and you wouldn't be aware of some of the struggle. We might share because you and I are Black African, so there might be struggles that we share commonly, but you have a privilege because you are a man. So there's also patriarchy that protects you, right? And that's what I speak about in my paper. There's some of the themes that that I explore. And interestingly, you should ask me that. There's a colleague, Kolani Mbanjwa, who works for Newsroom Africa, and he came up to me after my paper was published, and he was like, thank you so much for doing that, because as men, sometimes we are really oblivious to what our colleagues, especially Black African women, encounter, and this has opened my eyes. So I think for me, it was really just about that, Peter, that sometimes people know what they are doing right, sometimes they are not aware. So for me, this paper was, let's have the conversation and let's be frank and open about our own struggles in the media. And you rightfully said in your introduction that no one talks about journalists. You know, we are the voice of the voiceless, but who speaks for us, right? So I think for me, this was one of the opportunity to speak about this and bring it to have a conversation and also just let people in on what we do.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. What prompted you to come up with this research in the first instance?
So, Peter, I've been a journalist for 15 years and I've worked at several print, mainly print and now digital publications in South Africa. And early on in my career, but I think because I was still very young and I wanted to get my career going, there were discomforts that I could pick up, or maybe there were anomalies that I could pick up about, you know, our industry and how Black African women in particular, the treatment that they would get, you know. But I think as I matured and some of what I was seeing from the people that I found in the newsroom, I was also experiencing. And then I started having some discomfort. In fact, I wrote for another publication in Zimbabwe. I can't mention now because it hasn't been published. And I was saying that I started having a discomfort around 2021. I don't know, maybe it was the lockdown that forced me to think. And I was just thinking, but mainly why I started thinking about it, it was like one day I just thought, are there any veteran Black African women journalists in our newsrooms? And I couldn't think of them. And it could be different for broadcast, but in print and digital, I couldn't think of them. And I was seeing that those people that should be seen as veterans or elders in the industry were leaving. And going to do other things. And that was discomforting for me, because I was like, what then does this mean for the other generation? But what also does it mean for those of us who are still in the industry? Who do we lean on? Because also, Peter, I have to mention this. There's something comforting when I am bouncing ideas with someone that looks like me. I think you would agree with that. So for me, that was very discomforting, and especially because I know, how newsrooms operate and how Black African women will gravitate towards each other, and other women of other colors will, so there are those dynamics as well. So I was very uncomfortable. And then the company that I work for, Media 24, has a partnership with the Reuters Study for the Study of Journalism, and every year they encourage people to enter their ideas and go and spend 3 months at Oxford. So I entered my proposal. I was like, I want to, it's not that I didn't know what some of what was pushing these women out, but I was like, I need to speak to them so that it's not me saying it, but it's the people sharing their experiences. So, and then I embarked on that journey, went to Oxford for 3 months, and I was at the Reuters Institute as a fellow, and I produced the paper.
So when you presented the work in London, what kind of reaction did you get, especially from editors and colleagues from other parts of the world even?
So the interesting thing, Peter, about being part of the fellowship is that mostly it's colleagues from Europe, it's colleagues from North America, and I think there was only 2 of us from Africa, myself and Ngina, who's from Kenya. And so when I first pitched it, you could see that they didn't understand, because it's not their lived reality. I'm speaking of colleagues who, some of them come from mainly largely white, countries. Some of them, they don't know. So when I would be sharing about some of these challenges, you would see, like when you are sharing some of these challenges with a colleague from Denmark, they like, I don't know what you are talking about. So for many of them, they were really they didn't know what I was talking about. But when they could see the passion in which I was presenting my my paper, and also the passion in which I was pouring into the job, they started being, being interested and wanting to know more, even though that is not their reality. But they appreciated, learning and discovering what happens in other parts of the country. But also, there are things that as women in general we would share in common because of the fact that we are women. So there were things that other colleagues could identify with. But when I presented at the Frontline Club, it was a room full of white people, and some of them, you could see that, some of them were probably thinking, oh, get over it, you have a job. But they listened and they engaged.
All right, so I'm curious now, the women that you spoke to, the veterans, what did they share with you? What were some of the most striking stories they shared with you?
So I interviewed 10 women, Peter, and some of them are out, have left the industry, and some of them are still inside the industry. And I write in my paper that one of the things that struck me the most, the stories that they told me, I wasn't completely shocked, because like I said earlier, I had experienced some of them. But I think one of the things that still is with me even now, it still causes me a discomfort, is how our industry has failed to self-introspect, is how our industry has failed to evolve, and how our industry has failed to be welcoming to everyone. And I say this because some of these women that I spoke with, for example, I spoke to a woman who had been a journalist since 1994. her career is as old as our democracy in South Africa. And I spoke to a young woman who had only been in the newsroom for a year, and their stories were similar, you know. And that, for me, then said that we have not really, as an industry, sat down and interrogated what we are doing. So, and for example, Peter, you speak about one of the things I explore. I think the first chapter of my paper speaks about the lack of Black African women editor-in-chiefs in mainstream publications. There isn't, right? I speak about how at some point there was Zingisa Mkuma who edited the Sunday Independent. She left. I speak about how in the history of Sowetan, and you would know that for South Africa, Sowetan has a very rich history. It was very integral in the apartheid and whatever, and that in the history of that country, the only ever Black African women, or women for that matter, who ever edited it was Nobisa Makunga. You know, I speak about...
And that was just now.
I know, right? That was just now, and when she left, she was replaced by a man. I think the Sunday Independent, I'm not sure whether it still publishes now, but I think even after Zingisa had left, she was replaced by a black man. So I speak about that, like we have legacy publications in this country, and many of them are mainly edited by black men, and Black African men and white men to some extension. And the women that I speak about also linking to what I just said about the recycling of Black African men, and that they will leave the industry sometimes and then will come back, and there's always a soft landing for them, you know, there's always something waiting for them. And we speak about how even some of the things that they speak about is like how there's always a lot of scrutiny in women. For example, one of the women I spoke to was speaking about your former colleague, for example, when there's a former colleague at the public broadcaster who was about to retire, and everyone is like, yeah, she needs to retire. And she was like, but you don't get the same from men. We have men who are elderly, who are anchors on television, and no one is saying when are they retiring. So there's also those double standards. And one of the things the women I spoke to speak about is the boys club, and how there's this network of men, and how it's almost as though even the opportunities within newsroom, they revolve around these men, because some of them by their association with maybe politicians or industries, then when there are opportunities in the newsrooms, they are the first one to maybe get those opportunities. One of the things is also speak about how the privilege of white women compared to us as Black African women. And one of the young women I speak to, she said, I can't cry. You know, that literally she said that. She was like, I can't cry, but I have been in a newsroom when I've seen senior white women journalists crying, and the world stops and everyone stops and attends to them because they are crying because they've made a mistake, or they are having discomfort with the story. Whereas I don't get the same privilege. When I cry, I am seen as being incompetent. I don't know what I am doing. So there are also those nuances, and that's why I was saying to you that we can work in the same newsroom and be women and share similar struggles, but there are other advantages of privileges that white women or women of other color have access to that as Black African women we don't.
So it's clear to me that there are different layers to this. The one is race, because white women are treated better than Black women. How do we explain Black men being treated better than Black women?
It's patriarchy. It's literally patriarchy. There's nothing else. In fact, some of these women that I speak to, how some of these Black African men are even mediocre, you know, but because of patriarchy, you know. I mean, I don't have to explain to you what the privilege that men the world over experience because of the fact that they are men.
Is it conscious patriarchy? I mean, does an editor or owner of a newspaper, senior person, shareholders, whatever, of the Sowetan, for example, do they deliberately say, I don't want a woman, or they just not thinking about it, that they should have put a woman by now?
I mean, I can't, I don't know what it is, Peter, but one thing I know is that there isn't any shortage, and there has never been a shortage of Black African women who can do these jobs, right? So I don't know whether it's a thing of this is how things have been done, this has been the norm, and therefore we are not going to break this, but also the fact that you are not intentional about whether you are a media owner or whether you are an editor-in-chief, you are not intentional about training the next generation of leaders and saying, hey, hang on, I see something in Bongekile and I want to invest in her, right? I want to say practical things like, Bongekile, I want you maybe this week to shadow Peter, who is the editor-in-chief, and just get to see how things are being done. I think there's been that's missing. There's no intentionality. And I think because of that, even women who are capable have been discouraged in applying for these roles because they know that, I'm going to apply, but the likelihood is that they've already decided on X, Y.
So I'm going to ask you, I mean, like I said, I genuinely, maybe because I was just getting on with my life, was unaware. Does that mean that you are not making enough noise? That maybe people are just not, men in particular, are just not paying attention because they don't know?
Why though must we make noise?
Because clearly there's a blind spot that men have, and it's been passed down over generations, and they don't realize they've got that blind spot. And until you wake it up, for me, having girl children as daughters, as children, changed the game for me. Up until that point, I can put my hand up and say, there were a lot of things that I didn't see. And I just wonder, maybe you shouldn't have to, but maybe we have to get you to do things like you've done, write these papers, and say, hang on, we're here.
I mean, I think what I've done is it's part of starting the conversation, and I write about that maybe these 35 pages are not going to change the systemic and structural systems that have been there long before I was even born, but it's going to start a conversation. But also it's the thing of like see people.
Yes,
like
I
think
you.
more than for me, like it's, and I think that's the response that I have been getting from Black African women to say, we have operated in these spaces for so long and no one sees me. It's the thing of working in a newsroom, Peter, and you already know when you are Black, or when you are, especially when you are a Black woman, you break your back more than your brother is going to break your back, more than a white colleague is going to break your back. And so we are there, we are working. So for me, we shouldn't be invincible. We shouldn't be
invisible.
Invincible.
No, but you're so right about seeing people. I often remark when we walk into a building, how many people actually see the security guard?
Exactly.
It's there, but if you say who was on duty today, they can't tell you.
Exactly.
Let's talk about cyber misogyny and online harassment. Are Black women feeling it more as well?
Look, I've had this conversation with someone who was interviewing me for their masters along that, and I said, for me in particular, and maybe for some of my colleagues, especially in print, we are kind of like shielded from it because people just see our names, they don't know us. Whereas with colleagues who are in broadcast, whose faces are on your TV screen or whatever, they face it a lot. And I have seen that with, a lot of harassment and bullying. Our former colleague Tsidi Madia, who just died, she faced that a lot. There are other colleagues who faced that a lot. We've experienced that. I mean, so I think for me personally, and maybe like the colleagues that I am close with, especially in print, we don't face it as much because people just know our bylines, and Bongekile could be a man, or Bongekile could be anything. So for us, it's not. It's only when maybe there will be a video and then people will harass you. But also like when you are maybe on X and you are doing a thread and you say something that people don't like, then they think that they they have the ammunition to say whatever they like. I don't take kindly to that, and when necessary, I do respond.
What I do find, sadly, is because I've had my fair share of cyberbullying, but it's never about my manliness, my masculinity, my gender.
Yes.
It's always about my work or opinions. But
exactly.
with women, it does cross over
It does.
to how they look. Are they pretty? Are they big? Whatever it is, sadly.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is disgusting, really, because they will start coming for you for your looks, and my looks have got nothing to do with my job. They will start coming for who are you sleeping with. It's exactly the same thing as, especially like when women we ascend in our careers, there will always be those mamas. Oh, she's sleeping with Peter. But when Peter can do whatever he wants, he's not sleeping with anyone at the SABC. But Bongekile must be sleeping to someone, because how did she get there? It's not because of her. It's not because of my brains. It's not because of the work that I've been doing for the past 15 years, building my name. It's because someone, or if I'm not sleeping with someone, there's someone who's pulling the strings behind the scenes.
I believe that some women that you interviewed actually feared speaking out. Why is there that fear?
There's that fear, like in any, and I think one of the things that this paper has done was to educate people that what people face in other sectors of their work, we face as well. So there's a fear of speaking out because you are going to be victimized, or you might be sabotaging your career. And people have said that to me as well, that by doing this, do you not think that you are sabotaging your career? And I mean, I've had colleagues that I've looked up to who are older than me, who have been here before, saying, oh my God, thank you so much for doing this. We never had the courage to do, because at the end of the day, people have to feed their children. At the end of the day, people have to live. So there are things that we don't speak about. We will suffer in silence, or we'll speak about them in our own social circles, because you are preserving your career. You want to, you still have you still have ambitions of, and if there are certain things that you do, you have a mark on your back. You are labeled as an angry black woman. You are labeled as a troublemaker, But I think for me, it came to a point where, look, I've been a journalist for 15 years. I've built my name, and I don't think that I am at the mercy of anyone. And I'm not saying this to sound arrogant or anything or pompous, but it's just the truth. I have built my name as a journalist, and I don't think that by me doing this work, tomorrow if someone says I no longer want you, or I don't want to give you this position because of this, my children will go hungry. But also I think that a lot of things go wrong in the world because fear holds us back, right? And I think it's really about time that, and I'll say something I've said before, that one of my mentors in journalism, Lucas Lidwaba, a great author and journalist, said to me that if we do not write our stories or tell our stories, who's going to tell them? Like I said to you, I was in a fellowship with people from Denmark, Norway. They're not going to come from Norway and tell my story because they don't relate. Only I can write it better and say it better. In fact, one of, just to wrap this point, one of a former colleague, she's since resigned now, last month, who has been a journalist for 38 years. And eight of those years she had spent in Zimbabwe and 30 in South Africa. And I was a year old when she started practicing it. She said, Bongekile, thank you for giving me a gift that no one has ever given me in this industry for 38 years. And thank you for telling my story in a way that no one else would ever have told it.
So, if Black African women journalists are the victims, who are the perpetrators? Because this thing can't be happening on its own. There must be people doing it. Who are they?
And I don't like to use the word victim, Peter, because it's almost though like you are looking for pity, or, but I mean...
But you are prejudiced.
Yeah, we are being prejudiced, yeah. I mean, like I say in the paper, and like the women I spoke with say in the paper, you have the men, who looked out for each other. you know, whether they are white, whether they are black African men, they look out for each other. You have, you know, the white women who, or, you know, mainly white women, that's the strongest that came out. The white women, you have us as black women as well not being kind to each other, you know, because I also speak about that, the fact that, for example, you have me as a manager or you as an editor doesn't necessarily mean that I am going to be a great boss. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to be toxic, you know. So we are also toxic to each other. Other women are also toxic to us, you know. So yeah.
What can we do to turn the ship around? Awareness is the first step, because I think a lot of men don't know. So that's one step. What else can be done?
I think, like I said at the front line, when I was asked that question, how can newsroom better show up for black African women? And I just said, just see us. See us for the work that we do.
Yeah.
Recognize us for the work that we do. I mustn't scream and shout. My work should speak for me, and my work should be enough to say, actually, there is something in Bongekile that I think when there's an opportunity that arises, I consider her. Don't give me and also that's another thing that I've been trying to emphasize, Peter, to say, we are not saying give us things on a silver platter. No. Call us out when we need calling out. If we are not up to standard, if we are given opportunities and we squander them, then say, but it mustn't be a collective thing, because they are black African women who know what they are doing, who are diligent, who are brilliant. There isn't a shortage of them. They also, there needs to be fairness. The playing ground must be fair.
Yeah. I just don't know where to move with this, because we see the injustice, we are raising awareness to it, and yet chances are the needle is going to take very long to shift. Might a quota system help?
I mean, look, companies, and I mean, even South Africa does have laws that says that if you are a company, this is what needs to happen, right? And I think if there are people that are ignoring that even says that they are breaking the laws of the country, you know. And I'm uncomfortable with the word quotas, but it's a thing of, Peter, if you have people in your newsroom and you are seeing that there is an over-representation of other people, then it means that you are not intentional. I think more than anything, we need newsroom leaders, we need media house owners who are very intentional, who want to invest and who want to be part of the bigger, because this is not something that is happening in newsrooms alone, but it's part of a bigger societal issue or South African issue that we are dealing with, that there needs to be equality, there needs to be, you know, we need to see more black African women holding positions of power. Even, you know, I write in my paper, for example, and you've covered ANC conferences, for example, where we will always be asking, when are we going to see the next African, the next woman president of the ANC, right? So I think for me, there's a bigger conversation happening nationally, and that newsrooms can't be left out of that, especially because we are the ones who write these stories and write about, oh, how in this sector it's only dominated. What are we saying about us? And especially for me, and I will emphasize, especially if there is no shortage, you know, you need to be intentional, train people, open up positions for people. Don't make people feel like no, you can only there's a ceiling that you as a black African woman can reach, but after that then you have to go and be a spokesperson or be whatever, when you can also grow to become the CEO of the media company, for example. But also don't break the laws of the country, because the laws of the country are in black and white.
So I would have talked about mentorship, but it's clear from what you said earlier that those role models are leaving. And so that there aren't, and there are very few that stay, that can actually mentor and role model. How do we fix that?
How do we fix that? I think it goes back to the point that I've just raised. Give Black African women the space to support them, because there's also that you will give Black African women the positions but not support them, frustrate them, so that you can say, yeah, look, Bongekile was going around saying that we are not giving them. We've gave them an opportunity. Now they are failing. Because, you know, we've worked in these organizations, we work in these newsrooms, and we see the kind of support that is being offered to other people. Mentor people, support them. If you are going to put me in a leadership position when you know that for 15 years I've mainly been a journalist, capacitate me, take me to leadership courses, you know, pair me up with people that have been doing that, they show me the ropes, you know. So it's not like the solutions are not there, but it's also what I've also been saying is that the solutions can't be asked from us as Black African women, because we didn't create this mess, you know. We just find ourselves being victims, to borrow from you, of all of this mess. But it's not like what do other industries do? You know, what do people in other sectors do to make sure that we have you know, Black African women rising up? If we don't have the capacity in the industry, let's look elsewhere and borrow from what other people are doing. But I don't think it's rocket science. It's just being intentional and seeing people for what they bring in the organization, and not looking at people and not seeing Black people as Black African women as the face of incompetence, that you can't trust them with big responsibilities, because you can trust us with big responsibilities. And there's been Black African women who have shown that they are capable and can do the job.
All right, perhaps finally, there's a young Black woman right now watching this episode, maybe in her final year, studying journalism. What message do you have for her if she's thinking, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have majored in journalism, if that's what my future is?
No, don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. And I think for me, this is not to discourage Black African women journalists who want to come in. Come in. Because if you don't do this, it will eat you up. Journalism is more like a calling. It will
Too right. You're not going to get rich.
It will wake you up in the night. You will go and do PR and you'll be frustrated because you are not going to tell don't be discouraged. Come. You'll probably find the Bongekiles who will hold your hand, but we deserve to be in these spaces. These spaces are not for other people. They are also for us. We deserve to be in these spaces, and we need to take and we need to occupy these spaces. And if it means that you have to push and shove, and do that. Because if we don't do that, there are certain stories that are going to be lost, that are not going to be told, because the people that occupy spaces, or the journalists, that they do not identify with those stories. So we are robbing millions and millions of other people who rely on the fourth estate to tell their stories. So don't be discouraged. There's space. Come, do what you have to do. We'll be here. We'll hold your hand. And even if we are not there, you can always find us. We can always hold your hand. But we can't be. It cannot be. We deserve to be here. We have to take up this space.
Bongekile, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for telling this story and sharing with us. And let's hope that these are the kinds of initiatives and steps that will gain momentum and effect change.
Thank you so much, Peter. And really, let's have the conversation. Let's start the conversation. And thank you for having me on this platform. By the way, before not to take too much of your time, one of the things that has encouraged me and affirmed me that this work was important is also having colleagues from Kenya, colleagues from Zimbabwe, colleagues from Namibia, saying that we can identify with the work that you have done. So that has encouraged me, and I hope that this is the beginning of more even collaborative work with other colleagues from in the continent to tell our stories. And like I said, no one is going to tell them. No one is interested.
You're so right. Thank you so much, Bongekile. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Peter.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of Channel Africa Conversations. Thank you so, so much indeed for joining us. Before I go, a reminder that we really do want to hear from you. And you're probably seeing on your screen now our social media handles and also our email address where you can contact us. And what I'd like to hear from you is, what did you think about this conversation? And also in the future, what kind of conversations would you like us to have, and with whom? We really do look forward to making sure that Channel Africa Conversations is the conversations that you're interested in. In the meantime, from me and the team, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
You are watching Channel Africa Conversations.